This is the Make and Mature podcast, a resource from First NSB, a family church in New Smyrna Beach, Florida. Our mission is to make and mature disciples of Jesus, and our prayer is that this week's episode does just that. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey everyone, my name is Ryan Flint, and welcome to this week's episode of the Make and Mature podcast. Today's episode is part two of a two-part conversation with Luke McKinney, the lead pastor here at First NSB, Brian Nicols, the lead pastor at Coastline Church, and Khalil Ayoub, the lead pastor at Beachside Church, all three local churches here in the New Smyrna Beach area. In today's episode, the conversation revolves around in-person church versus online church, the mentality behind church hopping, and how local churches can work together to advance the kingdom of God in the communities that God's placed them. Thanks for checking us out. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation.
Well, let me ask a couple questions here. Is online church a good substitute for in-person involvement?
I think it's a good substitute periodically.
Okay.
I think you go, on vacation and watch
Sure.
church online. That's great.
Yeah.
Go
You're sick.
Yeah, you're sick. We had some people over the winter. We got, obviously New Smyrna is a big snowbird city.
Mhm.
A lot of people that go back home. I got people that stay connected by watching online when they're out of town. We had people that got snowed in for like 2 weeks. They still had internet. They were able to watch. I think where it gets tough is like when it's not a periodical thing. It becomes like a crutch. It becomes this thing where like, well, I can punch my Sunday ticket, but I don't really have to go in person or get there. I'll even say it's good for you slept in on a Sunday. I'm not going to give you a hard time for accidentally sleeping in on a. You do you.
How about you, Khalil? You give him a hard time for that?
I don't know. Maybe.
If I sleep on a Sunday, we'll just play a beachside message online. But periodically, I think it can be good. I don't think that's that you use the word normalcy, or I don't know.
Normative. Yeah.
Normative.
Yeah.
I don't think that's if that's you going to church. I think you're missing out. But not only that, not only are you missing out, like there's other people missing out because of you not being there.
Yeah.
There's the connection goes both ways. It's good for me to go to church, but it's also good for me if you go to church.
That's right.
And let's be honest. Are you really paying attention? I'm just a blunt guy. Like, there's so many things distracting you.
Right.
Like, if I'm home and I'm watching something, it's probably in the background because I have so many things to do it.
Yeah.
How many people really sit on their couch or in front of their computer and they're completely engaged? No,
Sure.
They're probably on their phone, surfing the web, doing something else.
Yeah, I hear you.
I don't think that's the way to do church.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, I'm ADD, so you give me, I'm like a squirrel. You throw something and I'm looking at it, and so I think that whole aspect of I can't do it. I cannot do it. COVID was rough for me.
Yeah. I think. To your point. I mean, like if you're on vacation, sick,
Working,
periodically. I think there's. I mean, we live stream our 2 morning worship gatherings, and we're going to continue doing that, but it is not a substitute. Like if somebody said, "Hey, can I, do you have a preference whether we show up in person or online? Do you think it matters?" Well, I think in person is far superior because you're actually engaging with. You can be seen. You are able to see others, and you're able to do like. I mean, you guys say you take a time in your worship gathering where you tell people to kind of talk and spend some time together. Well, you can't. The online crowd, I guess, to just talk to the person sitting beside you on the couch or something.
Yeah. Everybody watching this, put in the comment section where you're watching from.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah,
that's all you can do. I don't. By the way, I'm worried now that all of our online attendance is going to plummet this next week. Nobody's online. This is not a conviction thing. I think the heart behind that, all the way that we feel, is because when it comes to the people that go to, when it comes to believers, I don't want anything from them. I don't want anything from the people in my church. I do want something for them.
Yeah.
And I know that my own life has been changed because of genuine connection in community with other believers. Our lives have been changed by connection with one another. That's what I want for people. It's not that I need them to come to Coastline so someone will hold a baby and someone will set out church stuff. That stuff's going to happen. But it's better. I think it's better for them to get
Absolutely. It's actually like, so I mean, as pastors, we want to encourage people to, hey, come to worship, be involved in the life of the church, engage. For them to gather with the family of God for the worship of God and to be connected with the people of God is for their spiritual good.
Yep.
And it is for our spiritual good. Like
Sure.
like we benefit each other when we gather and we do life together. And so, it's not just, oh well, let me mark off that Khalil showed up at church today. Like, it's actually in our best interest to be a part of the family of God.
There's practical ways you can look at that too. Like going to a football game, the experience is completely different than watching on television. Watching a fishing tournament, the experience is completely different than actually being on a boat and fishing.
Yeah.
Watching golf. So you just miss out. And
Yeah.
that's in every area of life. And
That's right.
so it just makes sense. Like if you really want to fully experience like the presence of God and worship with the body of Christ, it's really hard to do online,
Yeah. Agree.
right?
Yeah.
So what about so-called, you've probably heard this term, others have used it, church hopping. Like, what do you guys think about that? What's your thoughts on church hopping? So people maybe attending at one church for a little while, and then they decide, hey, we're going to go to this other church, and maybe they stay there for a while, and they say, yeah, we're going to go to this other church. What do you guys think? I mean, as a pastor, we experience this, right? We see
Yeah.
people come, we see people go. What are your kind of quick thoughts on church
Luke, you've
hopping?
been a senior pastor longer than us, so you've probably seen more of it. So
Yeah.
I'm going to let you. Take
Yeah,
it out if you don't
I've
mind.
seen more than my
Yeah.
fair share of people who've left, and there's various reasons. I think sometimes people leave for very good reasons. And one of those really good reasons is they move out of the area. It's like you can't fault somebody who's moved out of your area, and you want them to be in a local church, a local congregation. And sometimes people leave for other reasons that there are legitimate reasons that people may choose to leave a church. It could be something going on specifically in their family, or maybe something that's going on in relationship to someone else. I think the concern, though, is in relationship with someone else, though, is that if there's a conflict that needs to be worked through, I think it's healthiest. It's healthy for us to work through like conflicts and issues that need to be resolved. And it doesn't necessarily mean that everything's going to go back to the way it was, right? I can forgive someone, but it doesn't mean that it never happened, right? So I think that I think what my feelings on church hopping are mixed feelings, and they're mixed because it's hard when you see people leave. You've developed a relationship with people, you've poured into people, they've poured into you, and you've connected on a personal level. And for someone to leave, it can be hard when it's something when what you hear is something of a preferential kind of a nature, right? When what they're communicating is preferential in nature or secondary. Yeah, I think that's a good word for it. That you just kind of feel like, it's like, man, like you've been a part of this church, and we've invested in you and you've invested in us, and it's hard to when that happens and you hear something like you said of a secondary nature or like a preferential nature. It's just kind of like you just kind of you shake your head, and it's frustrating.
Yeah.
When that happens, and then sometimes people leave because I've either I or someone else our church maybe have said or done something that was hurtful, and so that's unfortunate. I certainly don't want to be the cause of anybody walking out the door, but I know I've made mistakes in 16 years of pastoring here at First NSB, and I wish that people wouldn't leave over situations like that, but unfortunately that's happened as well.
Yeah, I think the Bible's pretty clear. The church is a family. There's some terms that it uses. It's a body. You see that in Romans 12.
Yeah.
And then 1 Corinthians 13, I believe.
1 Corinthians 12, I think.
Yeah, 1 Corinthians 12. And so we function better. Like I take that seriously. Like if you join Beachside, if you go to the Next Steps class in the application, it says, have you left another church and have you left in good standing? And my heartbeat is Like, I don't want to grow from robbing other churches. I want to grow by people getting saved and baptized. And
Absolutely.
Brian and I have talked about this often. And so if there's some way, shape, or form like that you can reconcile, I mean, that's my heartbeat. And I know a couple had come from Brian's church a while ago, probably about 2 years ago, and I made them have a conversation with Brian. And, you know, because I just wanted, like, that was their shepherd for, I don't know how long they attended your church.
Yeah, a couple years.
And I know Brian personally, and I know he had invested in them. And so I think when we look at situations like that, I think, you know, it hurts us sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think a lot of people understand the marks it leaves on the pastor, you know, because some of those people they've been confidants for you, right? And they've been people who have lifted your arms in weary seasons, especially at Beachside. For me, you know, we were under 15 in COVID. I mean, there was times where I was just scratching my head. Our tithe was like $500 a week sometimes. I didn't think we were going to make it. And we had a few, like, and I was very clear when I came in the changes we were going to make. And I had a few instrumental people just leave during that time. I love them. There's no hard feelings towards them. But two of them didn't even talk to me and tell me why.
Yeah.
And so it's, yeah, I mean, I look at a family, and in the Middle Eastern culture, family's everything, right? And so, yeah, I think it's important.
Yeah.
What do you think, Brian?
I mean, there's, I can think of lots of reasons why people might go to a different church or change where they're going to church. The question that was asked was about church hopping, which when I connect to that, it's about, when I think of that term, I think of someone who's not connected to a church, and just church. And at that point, that kind of becomes like a feed me mindset. Like it's all, consumerism is a good word. And I don't see that in Jesus. I don't see that in how he teaches and talks about what we should be doing and his disciples. It's not about me. And so I think as we are pursuing Jesus, to adjust or even question our own selves, has it become all about me?
Yeah.
You know, and so to push past consumerism into not being a consumer but a contributor, to be a part of building the kingdom, of building a church or the church. You know, it's easy for me to talk about building a church because we don't meet in a building, we meet in a high school.
Yeah.
The church are the people. Like at some point we're supposed to be building each other up. As far as the leaving the church part goes, like going to a different church, you know, like you know, when you talked about a couple, I don't initially find offense in that. Where I would find offense is if, when it comes to like the ghosting part, which is that's a like term, I guess, term the kids are using now, where you just slip out the back door and see you later. Or for me, because I come from a church hurt past, like I'm very sensitive. I don't want that to be other people's story. You know, I want to try to protect that as much as I can. And so if it's something that
so you want to have an opportunity to apologize if you've wronged them,
sure, or
just a conversation,
or I think as good friends and family do, like our culture has shifted from like we don't have tough conversations anymore. We just shift.
At all, yeah.
We leave, or we don't talk to anymore. And I even as I say it, I'm thinking of times I've done it in my own life. You know, but culture is, I think that's the wrong way to go about it. I think that when it comes to healthy family, you know, dear Lord help me, if Erica ever leaves me and doesn't tell me why, like I would be broken in shambles. Someone come check on me.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Tough conversations are good. You know, tension can be good.
It's a growing thing for you.
Yeah, you think about.
We have blind spots.
Sure,
all of us do.
Sure,
right.
I've got a dear friend, one of my oldest friends. I baptized him 10, 12 years ago, and he came to me probably a year and a half ago and says, "Hey man, I'm just letting you know I'm thinking about making the shift. I'm going away." And I stopped him. I said, "Well, why?" And what it was church hurt. He was experiencing some church pain, some growing pains and stuff like that. And he called out some things that had happened from me that I had done. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't take offense to it. I was like, man, you're right. Like but what about if you didn't leave? What about if you just brought this to me and said like, and we worked on it, and I'm the better for it. Now, luckily enough, I mean, him and his wife didn't leave the church, and I adjusted some things that definitely should, and it was good that I adjusted them. It was helpful to hear that.
Yeah.
I
good
think
story.
it would have been to my detriment if they just walked out the back door and never saw him again.
Yeah.
That would have been a detriment to the church.
Yeah, and I think
your growth.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and you made a good distinction early on with your comments about like a church hopper being kind of like a like maybe a consumer,
Yep.
versus someone who's been invested and engaged and
Sure.
involved in the life of a church, and something happens that leads them to make a decision to change churches. And so, yeah, I think that's a good distinction.
Yeah.
That on the one hand, you've got somebody that maybe is kind of like looking at it from a preferential standpoint or a consumer standpoint, whereas someone who maybe they've been invested and involved and they've kind of weathered some challenging seasons, but then kind of they get to a place where they're like, I really feel like I need to make a change, and so that can happen as well. So let me ask this question, and these are just real stuff that happens in churches, right? So what about those involved in multiple churches, right? So maybe they worship in one church, small groups somewhere else, do children's ministry somewhere else. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think a believer should be all in a particular church body, a particular church family? And how does that benefit them, their family, and that church? So really kind of a multifaceted question here. Like, what do we say to those who are maybe like they're involved in multiple churches and there's not like one specific church that they're all in? Like, is that healthy? Is that good for them spiritually? Is it good for the churches that they're connected with? What do you guys think?
That's not something I really experience. I mean, we're a revitalization, so we don't have like all the programs like you guys do. I mean,
Yeah.
you guys have an incredible facility, and you're meeting in a high school, so I don't think that's part of the DNA at Beachside. I think people at Beachside aren't there for the programs, and that's probably the same thing at Coastline. And so that's probably, I saw that a lot in Charlotte at my big church that I was a pastor at. I had a lot of college students who come on Tuesday nights. They had a different church that they attended on Sunday morning. I haven't given thought to that in years, but I'm sure it could potentially be extremely frustrating for you.
Yeah, I think that what I would say is I think investment in a specific church is in the best interest not only of the individual and the family, but of the church. I mean, so like if you got somebody at Coastline who's a part of your church family, and you guys are trying, let's just say you have like, you got some kind of midweek, whether it's children's ministry or student ministry, and they're worshiping with you guys on Sunday morning. I mean, I don't know what you would say as a pastor, but I mean, if I've got a family in our church who's worshiping here at First NSB on Sunday mornings, and they're coming to church here, and they've got a couple of teenagers, I don't want them taking their children to a completely different church midweek for student ministry. It's like, we have student ministry. Like, why would you not want to be connected here with the students at First NSB, the people that you worship with on Sunday mornings? And
I would think it goes back to, I'm a big guy and proponent of, if you see a problem, help fix it.
Yeah.
Like, so my youth group's not what it needs to be. Instead of telling me that, I get it. I was a youth pastor for 6 years. I get it. Help me fix it.
Right.
And so I remember when I first came to Beachside, they wanted Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night once COVID kind of ended.
You mean like 3 worship gatherings?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I wasn't going to do Sunday night. And so we started Wednesday night, and I remember getting up there one week to preach, and we had a family show up, and there was nobody to do children's ministry. So my kids were always in the sanctuary, which is massive distraction. So I went to the congregants and I said, hey, I need someone to do children's ministry. And no one stepped up. So the next week I told Dawn, our old pastor, I said, no one shows up, I'm going to go do children's ministry and you can teach. So I got in the pulpit and I said, hey, I'm going to go do children's ministry if none of you want to, and Dawn's going to teach. No one volunteered, so I went and did children's ministry. 3 weeks later, I was still doing children's ministry with Alyssa. So I canceled Wednesday night. it's like you want it.
So there's no Wednesday night.
There's no Wednesday night.
Okay.
So
All right.
you wanted Wednesday night, but you weren't willing to allow us to do it for every demographic that would walk in the doors. And so it goes back to consumerism. Like, that's not okay to me. It's like, help us fix it. Help us, especially at a revitalization and a church plant, right?
Yeah.
You know that there's holes, massive holes that you need to fill in discipleship, because this is all discipleship we're talking about. Different places these individuals could connect. I need people that have such a love for the church. They're saying, yeah, I'm going to use my gifts and talents that God's given me, and I'm going to help fix this.
Yeah.
Because what is more beautiful than having 60% of the youth in our city going to youth groups on Wednesday or Sunday nights and growing in a church that they can call their church if they stay here locally after college, right? It's better for the kingdom.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you think about, like, if you're a, like, you guys don't have Wednesday nights, you don't have any programming on Wednesday nights.
We just have worship night once a month.
Okay, worship night once a month. But it's like, as your church is growing and you guys are thriving, you're doing well. As your church is growing, I mean, hopefully the folks that are committed and then involved at Beachside on Sundays, if there's this desire for, like, midweek student ministry or children's ministry, hopefully people step up and say, you know what, we're a part of this church family. We got students here. We're going to make it happen. We're going to step up and serve and see that this happens. I really think, and I know we have I don't know, maybe we have too many programs going. We got a lot of stuff going on at First NSB. We're a busy church. And I realize we have more things going on than a lot of other churches have going on. And so we get people who come from other churches, and I'm fine with that. Like, I'm okay with that. It does disappoint me, though, and I do find it frustrating when people they decide for whatever reason, maybe they've been coming to worship here and they're like, we're going to go somewhere else, but we're still going to hang on to the parts of First NSB we want to hang on to. I shouldn't say it's frustrating, because it's like, I look at it at that point, it's like, man, I really feel like you're kind of just consuming the parts of the church you want.
Yeah.
And you're not willing to fully invest and be fully involved and all in here at First NSB. And that one to me is frustrating. But for a church that doesn't have, like, at Coastline, you guys don't have midweek children's ministry. It's like, if Coastline families bring their kids to Awana, great.
Yeah.
That's fine. I would not want to see, though, a situation where you guys at Coastline said, you know what, we're gonna launch a midweek children's ministry. I wouldn't want to see a situation where Coastline families bypassed Coastline Kids Ministry to come to First NSB Kids Ministry. I wouldn't want to see that, because it's like, well, you guys are a part of Coastline. Right? That's your church family.
Yep.
So if you guys are launching this and you guys have midweek children's programming, support that. Right? Or if you got midweek student ministry, support that. Don't bypass that because whatever we have, you like it better. So yeah, I think that my position is really all in is the ideal. I would encourage that rather than being kind of in different places. But I get the fact that not every church is going to be able to offer the level of stuff that's going on.
Yeah, I mean, just because real estate's so expensive in this area, like, I mean, it's hard to do the things that you want to do, especially for where we're at, and you only get the building once a week. I mean, what do you think about this whole?
I mean, the good news, I mean, we got a good example of different sized churches, and I'm new on the block, 7 years, but like what Luke said, I don't have a midweek worship service that's happening. I know of some families that attend and are plugged into Coastline regularly that come to First NSB's youth ministry. I'm thankful for it, man, because I'm at a point where it's for me, it would be me and Erica leading youth, and no teenager wants to come hang out with me and Erica, and so it's one of those things where, like, I look at it as First NSB as, and especially to the kingdom, the church, not just as a blessing in the community for that. The part that you're talking about, though, is definitely like this consumerism, like, go where cherry pick here and there. If I when I got teenagers, man, there's not a point in which I'm not going to invest into our youth ministry and trying to make it what it could be. And I would hope parents would do the same thing. I think where your home church is, man, invest in that. Build the kingdom. One of the things I love is that I don't think there's ever a point in which I'm going to stand before the Lord. He's going to say, "You didn't do enough for the brand of Coastline. You didn't do enough to make that thing what it should." I think there could be a chance in which he says, "You didn't do enough to build the kingdom. You didn't do enough to help out the church as a whole." And so, I think when you get into that consumer mindset, it takes you out of the offense of being a contributor, of building the kingdom. Now at that point, you're just consuming the kingdom, and I don't think that's what Jesus wants for us.
Yeah,
I think He wants us to be a part of it.
Even
He said, "Go make disciples." Right?
Even as pastors,
put in the effort.
Even as pastors, we have to protect our own hearts if we're honest. That it's a universal church.
Yeah.
It's not my church; it's God's church.
Yeah.
We all work for the same guy.
Yeah. And I want in my heart, I want to be cheering Luke on. I want to be cheering Brian on. I mean, me and you have become pretty close, and Luke, we're getting close. But I'm pumped when you guys are doing well, because that's what's best for this area.
Yeah.
And I think we can all. You two grew up here. Well, you've been here for 17
Yeah,
years.
I didn't grow up here, but yeah.
You grew up here, and I mean, you guys is in my heart is here.
Yeah.
We love our community, right?
Well, and what's best for New Smyrna Beach and our surrounding community is for our churches to be strong and healthy, and being faithful to proclaim the gospel, and being faithful to God's word, and making and maturing disciples. And First NSB can't do it all by ourselves.
No.
Beachside's not going to do it alone. Coastline's not going to do it alone. And so, it's like, how do we work together? How do we pay more than lip service to this idea that we're all on the same team? Because we are, right?
Yeah.
We're on the same team, and we serve one Lord, and we have one mission to make disciples of Jesus. And there's going to be things we disagree on, right? I know, Brian, you mentioned before the cameras came on that your wife preached yesterday at Coastline. Well, we don't have women preachers at First NSB.
Yeah.
I mean, there's things we're going to disagree. I know you guys don't have it at Beachside, but there's going to be things we disagree on. And so
we don't got to be identical twins.
Right, there's going to be doctrinal disagreements.
Secondary issues.
So, but if we can agree on the gospel,
The
death, the burial, the resurrection of Jesus Christ, Jesus is the only Savior. You got to repent of your sin and believe in Him. He's the only way of salvation. I mean, there's a lot we can do together to encourage each other. And so, I mean, if there's teenagers from Coastline who want to have a midweek student ministry that they can participate in, great.
Yeah.
Have them come to First NSB. And how we can encourage each other and work together. But I think that as we do that, we want to encourage our people. Hey, look, be all in. If you're a Beachside, be all in at Beachside.
Yeah.
Like be involved in a Beachside small group.
Yep.
And give to support the mission of making disciples through Beachside Church. And same thing at Coastline. Like wherever you are, be there. Be someone that we can count on you.
Yeah.
Like we can count on you, and you're accountable, and you are loved, and you are being and you're loving, and it's like you're a part of, and you're known.
Yeah.
You're a part of our family. And so
don't just come in the back. Like that's another thing. Like I just like so many people just want to be boom and get out quick.
Right.
And you're missing
the
beautiful part of church.
It's relationships.
It's relationships.
Absolutely. Let me ask this question. What is one thing, and there may be more than one, but what's one thing about church culture that you wish you could change?
I can go first on this. I just want people to be real, like authentic. There's so many people who are struggling with the same thing you're struggling in the pews, but we just don't talk about it. And so let the mask off and it's okay. I love this statement. It's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to stay there.
Yeah. And
I think there's points and times where people aren't okay, but they just don't know how to get out of it. And I love what Jesus says to Peter. He says, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat. He's just about to take you to the cleaners, man. And you're going to be broken, and you are going to question everything, and you are going to be devastated. But when he's done, get up and encourage the believers. I think one of the most powerful things in Christianity is a testimony. And so when we take the mask off and we're saying, hey, like Brian, I've been there. Like Brian was saying about church hurt earlier, just sharing his story. Someone's going to connect on that. Listen to this. And hopefully they show up to Coastline because of that, because that's a pastor who has struggled the way they struggled and gotten through it. I think we're missing so much in the church we're just missing so much when we just put these masks on of hypocrisy. Like, I'm good.
Yeah.
My world's in order. We do it like, right? You have guests coming over, everybody clean the house. And you start yelling at your kids, clean. No. And then you start throwing things in closets because you want this image, right? That my house is clean all the time, that I got my stuff together. Dude, my stuff's not together, right? And like, sometimes it's nice to walk into someone's house and it's dirty because you're like, bro, we got the same struggle, right?
Yeah, my house dirty too.
So, and it's okay for your kids like to be wild and crazy and you have to correct them in front of people so they don't feel like they're failing as a parent, right? Oh, we just need to get messy together.
Okay, yeah, that's great. I think that's great. Yeah, absolutely. Be real.
You talk about testimony. I heard someone once say, when it comes to theology and stuff like that, there's things that we can disagree on, right? You can't disagree with someone's testimony. You can't argue with what God's done in my life. I'm gonna tell you what's happened. There's power in that for sure. If you're talking about culture today, church culture, things that would change. I hinted at the ghosting part. I think it's based off of people don't like tension, and I think tension can be good. I think you can grow through tension, and I think that tension in the church can be okay. I think that if you're going through a tough time, or you got something with what's going on with leadership, or what Khalil, myself, or Luke say, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about it. Let's grow through it together. I hate the walk out the back door and don't say anything to anybody anymore.
Yeah.
That's a tough. I've got relationships in my own life that like I don't talk to people more because that's happened, and it's a tough way to live. I don't think that's what's best. Ghosting, I think it would change. And then the other part is, which I feel like every day it's getting better and better. But we kind of grew up in the sense of like in a time where our culture said that churches like competed with one another. That you had to have the First NSB sticker on the back of your car, or the beachside sticker, or the coastline sticker, or whatever, and like that was like the gang you're a part of, and I feel like, man, I want to live in a world where I'm celebrating and helping build the kingdom of God. I tell people, man, I'm okay if you put another sticker on the back of your car, especially if you're that guy driving down the road and telling everyone they're number one.
Yeah, it's probably better.
Put that beach sticker.
I don't get
beachside
stickers out for that reason. My people are bad drivers.
But competition, we all, like I said, we all work for the same guy, and I find joy when other churches help out each other.
Yeah.
I think that our community is better. It's been so long. When I first did church planning, I looked at the statistics of New Smyrna Beach, Edgewater, and Simswell. It's like 60,000 people or something like that. It's probably grown since then because that was 7 years ago. There was less than 10% of that was plugged into a church at any point. So like 10% of the people were going to various churches, and there's lots of churches in the area.
Barna put out a statistic in 2017 that we're in the sixth most de-churched and ninth most unchurched areas in the country.
There's lots of people that aren't a part of the kingdom.
Yeah.
And I think, man, there's going to be times where people come to Coastline and they're like, that wasn't it. The pastor's wearing flip-flops. He's wearing an untucked Columbia shirt, and he talked about fishing half the time. That's not for me. I'm like, well, let me tell you about another church. I think that's a win. We talk about the same couple, and we don't talk about it as an example. We talk about it as I celebrate that.
Yeah.
I found there's a couple that, man, they are plugged in at Beachside now more than they were ever plugged in at Coastline, and they're a key part of what through what God is doing through Khalil and building the kingdom. And so I think, man, I think to celebrate
And
that.
it's not awkward when you run into them
No,
because they had a conversation with you.
yeah, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, that's
So,
good. Well, you're leading us really into this idea of like what can we do as churches to work together? Like how can we practically? What do you guys think? I mean, how can we at First NSB, you guys Beachside Coastline, how do we work together to make and mature disciples here in New Smyrna Beach?
well, I'm gonna start sending everybody to Kiwanis on Wednesdays, so that's where I'm.
Awana.
I don't even know.
I don't know Kiwanis.
Sorry,
That's
man.
like I'm not sure what that is. I've heard of it, but
It's a park in Merritt Island, I think.
well, you can send them, but actually, we've got
You're
the
gonna make me and Erica come
Awana award ceremony is
volunteer.
coming up this week, so
Yeah.
Awana's going to end till the new school year. But in the new school year, absolutely, yeah.
No. Man, I think that to understand that we're all called to serve the kingdom, I think is a part of it.
Yeah.
When it comes to not just the brand or the stamp of Coastline to help people find the kingdom. To me, I'm working through personal stuff of just my time management. I'm at a place where I've split between 2 jobs.
Yeah.
And I'm at a place where I feel like at the end of the day, God's going to judge me based off how you continue to build the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Khalil and I, and actually, this was totally by accident, and it could have been terrible. But like 3 or 4 Easters ago, we booked the same venue for Easter sunrise. He got the permit for the city, and I got the permit for the county. And at some point, someone told us like, "Hey, there's 2 signs going up saying you guys are doing the same event at the same time." I was like, "Heck no, we're
So you
not."
all had to figure out how to be on the same team, right?
We're gonna be on the same, yeah. And it was
God did it.
It was
Yeah,
a tough thing, and it turned into a great friendship. And there's times where, man, I could be struggling. I know I call Khalil, and he's gonna help me. He's gonna encourage me. I'm gonna do the same thing with him. I think that the more that we do together, I think the better that we are. And I also think the more that we talk.
Yeah. Like a conversation like this is really good.
Yeah.
When we guys,
not only that,
when we had breakfast the other day together, I mean, it's good
You
stuff.
walk away encouraged.
Yeah, it's good,
and-
and it's good to have that face-to-face interaction relationship to hear. I mean, like you guys, I can talk openly about things I'm dealing with. You guys can talk openly, and I know that this is kind of the beginning of a relationship for at least for in as far as my involvement with you guys. But I think it's great. I think the more we talk, the more we do stuff together. I think it helps.
I think one thing is just trying to figure out what the biggest need in our community is that one church can't tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And when we figure that out and we start having conversations with our people and saying, hey, what's going on in the community, whether that's like all the churches getting together and starting a drug rehab facility or something of that nature that can have like a major footprint in our community.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's when the churches have to unite. The churches do really good meal with the hot meals program in the Methodist Church. Like we give to it. I think you do. And I think
we give to it. We have a team that does once a month. Yeah.
That's not spoken about often, but it's all the churches in the community coming together, and there's multiple ministries. I think paraministries do a very good job of trying to get churches to connect and help with the ministry. I think what has happened in leadership is it goes back to you look out on Sunday morning and your congregation is fizzling and you have a budget and you have these pressures on you and you got to go in protective mode. And if the people would just gather and they would say, this is my church, and the pews were filled and the chairs were filled, I don't think that would be a problem with any pastor, right? I think you would naturally come together. And so I think part of it is us breaking down our own pride and trusting God.
Yeah.
Like I've had to trust God a lot in the last 3 years, and he's shown up every single time. And Brian, I know that same thing with you. You're trusting God right now that he'll provide a piece of land for you to build a building. So if any of you are really wealthy out there, talk to Brian. But it's
Brian at coastlinensb.com.
But I think when we look at all of that, I think part of it starts with us and our deacons and our elders saying, hey, God has us. It's his church.
Yeah, that's right.
And then we'll come together and we won't worry about it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Got to get everybody on the offense. Families, it's not about what I can get. It's about what I can do and give.
Yeah.
To put into action. Same thing with our leadership teams.
Well, the more we talk, the more we know like what's going on in each other's churches and ways we can work together. So like, hey, if you guys need some help with this surf camp you guys got going on this summer, if we can help you guys out, then great.
Yeah. Let's pinpoint this to church wise. Because we're talking about like, imagine the community if all the churches helped out. Imagine if all the people at First NSB decided they were going to commit and they were going to be involved and they were going to do something. Man, you could do some stuff. Same thing with Coastline.
Yeah,
it's not a point where I'm like, hey, I'm sending
Be a game changer.
Oh, game changer. If you would go from what they said, the statistic is that of every church, there's like 25% of people that are involved and committed, and they're responsible for 80% of what happens.
Yeah,
man, if you could change that number, if you get people that were committed and plugged in and building the church and being the church and not just attending and consuming, man, your church would all our churches would completely change for the better. So,
well,
get involved, get plugged in.
Absolutely. We, it's essential for our spiritual health and well-being to be connected with a church family. It's a blessing for us, our families. It's a blessing to those churches we're a part of. And so, well, it's great to have this conversation with you guys. And before we conclude our podcast, I'd like to pray for you guys and just pray for the work that's going on at Coastline, the work that's going on at Beachside. So let me say a prayer, and then we'll wrap up our conversation. All right?
Thanks for having us, Luke.
Absolutely, I appreciate you guys. Let me pray. Father, I thank you for these men, for Khalil, for Brian, and I thank you for the churches that they lead, Beachside and Coastline. And Lord, I just pray that you'd bless these churches. I pray they would thrive, and I pray, Lord, that your gospel would be proclaimed faithfully and truthfully in these churches. And Lord, I pray that your word would be taught rightly, and Lord, that disciples would be made and matured. And Lord, I pray for churches throughout our community. Lord, I pray that we'd be faithful to you, faithful to your word. Lord, I pray you'd renew and revitalize your people. And Lord, help us to faithfully do your will in all things. Lord, help us to reach this community for you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Well, guys, I really appreciate you guys giving some of your time. I know
thanks for putting this on, man.
I know you're busy. Yeah. I know you're busy, and thank you guys for the conversation today. I think it was helpful, and let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks again for tuning in to this week's episode of the Make and Mature podcast. Season 1 of the Make and Mature podcast is coming to a close. We're actually going to wrap up Season 1 next week with a Q&A episode. So if you have any questions from today's episode or any previous conversations you've heard on Season 1, be sure to let us know by doing one of three things. Either you can comment that question or comment below. You can send us that question or comment via email at info@firstnsb.org, or you can text it to us at 386-766-7496. Hope you enjoyed today's conversation, and thanks for checking us out. See you next time.